Admiral Vale stood at the command center of his ship, his tall frame casting a long shadow across the gleaming floor. Through the massive view screen, the blue-green planet called Earth hung like a small jewel against the black canvas of space. His four-fingered hand tapped impatiently on the control panel as he reviewed the initial scans. "Such a primitive world," he muttered, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had seen thousands of planets. The data streaming across his screen showed numbers that made him shake his head. The humans' physical capabilities were laughable compared to the standard galactic average. The door slid open with a soft hiss, and Dr. Reed walked in, her scaled skin reflecting the soft blue light of the ship's interior. "Admiral, the preliminary reports are ready," she said, holding up a datapad. Unlike the Admiral, who had visited hundreds of worlds, this was her first evaluation mission. "Let me guess," Vale said, not bothering to turn around. "Their strongest specimens can barely lift twice their body weight. Their fastest runners would lose to a juvenile runner from the plains of Tor." He let out a sound that might have been a laugh. Dr. Reed nodded, but her expression showed curiosity rather than dismissal. "That's correct, Admiral. However, there are some interesting anomalies in their development pattern that—" Vale waved his hand, cutting her off. "Save the scientific curiosity for your reports, Doctor. We're here to evaluate their worthiness for the Federation, not study their peculiarities." He finally turned to face her, his silver eyes reflecting centuries of experience. "I've seen 1,000 worlds like this one. They all followed the same pattern." The ship's AI announced their descent trajectory, and Vale watched as they broke through Earth's atmosphere. The clouds parted before their advanced shielding, revealing the sprawling cityscape below. The humans had been informed of their arrival, and Vale could see their primitive aircraft keeping a respectful distance. "Look at their vehicles," he said, pointing to a commercial airliner that seemed to crawl through the sky compared to his ship. "Still using combustion engines, still bound by their physical limitations. The Federation's standards are clear. A species must demonstrate exceptional qualities to be considered for membership." Dr. Reed studied the city below with more interest. "They've achieved remarkable progress in just a few centuries, Admiral. Their rate of technological advancement is—" "Irrelevant," Vale interrupted again. "Progress without power is meaningless. The galaxy is a dangerous place, Doctor. We need strong allies, not weak links." He straightened his uniform, preparing for the first official contact. "Their delegation awaits us. Let's get this evaluation over with." The ship landed in a designated area, surrounded by human security forces that Vale found almost amusing with their primitive weapons. As the ship's ramp extended, Earth's gravity hit him, so weak he barely felt it. Another sign of this species' limitations. The human delegation approached, led by a man in a dark suit. Vale's translator picked up their simple language easily. Behind him, Dr. Reed was already taking readings with her instruments, but Vale had seen enough. In his mind, the evaluation was already complete. What Vale didn't notice, however, was the way the humans worked together. How efficiently they had organized this meeting. How quickly they had adapted their protocols to accommodate an alien species. He missed the subtle signs of their true strength, focused as he was on their physical limitations. As he prepared to meet the humans face to face, Admiral Vale was certain of one thing. Earth would be another brief stop in his long career, another world to be noted and forgotten. He had no way of knowing that this visit would challenge everything he thought he knew about strength, about progress, and about what made a species truly advanced. Little did he know, Earth was about to show him something that would change his view forever. The testing facility buzzed with activity as Admiral Vale set up the standard Federation evaluation protocols. The large warehouse-like building had been quickly converted by the humans to meet his specifications, though he found their efforts primitive at best. First test, physical capabilities, Vale announced to the gathered crowd of human scientists and officials. He gestured to a massive metal cube sitting in the center of the room. A simple strength assessment. On most worlds, moving this object is considered a basic requirement. The cube gleamed under the bright lights, its surface marked with strange symbols. Dr. Reed checked her instruments and nodded. The cube masses approximately 2,000 of their kilograms. Admiral. Vale watched as the first human participant, a muscular man named Mike, stepped forward. The human looked confident, but Vale knew better. He had seen countless species fail this basic test. The strongest human would struggle to move what a child from the warrior clans of his world could lift with ease. Mike wrapped his hands around the specially designed handholds and strained. His face turned red with effort. But the cube didn't budge. After several attempts, he stepped back, breathing heavily. As expected, Vale said, making notes on his datapad. Next test. But Dr. Reed was watching something else. In the corner of the room, a group of humans had gathered around a small table. They were drawing diagrams and discussing something in low voices. One of them, a woman in work overalls, was examining the floor beneath the cube. The next test involved reaction speed. Vale set up a series of lights that would flash in random patterns, a standard reflex evaluation used across the galaxy. The humans tried their best, but their responses were painfully slow compared to galactic standards. Their neural pathways are simply too basic, Vale explained to Dr. Reed. They process information at less than half the speed of a developed species. Yet again, Dr. Reed noticed something unusual. The humans weren't discouraged. Instead, they were watching, learning, adapting their strategies with each attempt. Each participant performed slightly better than the last, as if they were somehow sharing their experiences. The third test was meant to measure problem-solving abilities. Vale presented a holographic puzzle, a complex three-dimensional maze that required understanding advanced spatial relationships. He expected it to take hours, if they could solve it at all. That's when something unexpected happened. Instead of one person attempting the puzzle, the humans formed small groups. They weren't just trying to solve it. They were teaching each other, pointing out patterns, building on each other's insights. Admiral, Dr. Reed said quietly, you might want to see this. Vale looked up from his datapad, irritated by the interruption. His expression changed to confusion as he watched the scene unfold. The humans had solved the puzzle in just 40 minutes, not through individual brilliance, but through collective effort. But what really caught his attention was what was happening back at the strength test. The woman in overalls had returned with several pieces of equipment. She and her team had analyzed the cube's position and the floor structure. Now they were setting up what looked like a primitive lever system. What are they doing? Vale asked, genuine curiosity creeping into his voice for the first time. Dr. Reed's eyes sparkled with interest. They're not trying to match our strength, Admiral. They're finding a way around it. Look, they're using simple physics to their advantage. Vale watched as the humans positioned their makeshift lever system. With careful coordination and applied physics, they were about to demonstrate something that would challenge his first impressions of Earth's capabilities. The Admiral's report was already getting more complicated than he had expected. And as he stood there, watching these supposedly primitive beings at work, a tiny crack appeared in his certainty about what made a species truly advanced. The warning alarms blared through the testing facility without warning. Red lights flashed across the walls as both humans and aliens looked up in surprise. Admiral Vale's communicator buzzed urgently, and his silver eyes widened as he read the message. Dr. Reed, he called sharply, we need to return to the orbital station immediately. His voice carried an edge that none of the humans had heard before. Tom Walker, the engineer in charge of the facility's operations, stepped forward. Is everything all right, Admiral? He asked, noting the concern on the alien's face. Vale hesitated, then decided there was no point hiding the situation. Our sun monitoring systems have detected a massive solar storm approaching, one of the largest I've seen in my centuries of space travel. He paused, looking at the primitive technology surrounding them. Your planet's magnetic field might protect your surface, but our orbital station's shields weren't designed for something of this magnitude. The humans gathered around their monitors, which were already showing the incoming storm. The numbers didn't look good. Dr. Reed's scaled fingers flew across her datapad as she calculated the impact. "Admiral," she reported, her voice tense, "the radiation levels will overwhelm our standard shields in approximately 2 hours. The backup systems won't be enough." Vale's command mask slipped for a moment, showing real worry. The station housed over 300 Federation personnel and contained irreplaceable scientific data. Evacuation would take too long, and there weren't enough ships to move everyone. "Can we boost the shield power?" Tom asked, looking over Dr. Reed's shoulder at her calculations. "Impossible," Vale replied sharply. "Our shields are already operating at maximum capacity. Even with all reserve power redirected, they won't hold against this level of solar radiation." He turned to his communication device, already preparing to contact the station and order emergency protocols. But Tom wasn't listening anymore. He had rushed to a computer terminal and was pulling up Earth's satellite data. His fingers flew across the keyboard as he accessed global weather patterns, magnetic field readings, and power grid information. "Admiral," he called out, his voice filled with an excitement that Vale found inappropriate for the situation. "I think we might have a solution, but you'll need to trust us." Vale looked at him with barely concealed skepticism. "Trust you? Your civilization barely understands basic space travel. What could you possibly?" "We might not have your advanced technology," Tom interrupted, something no one had dared to do to Vale before. "But we've been dealing with solar storms for decades. We've developed our own ways of protecting our satellites and power grids." Dr. Reed moved closer, her scientific curiosity piqued. "What are you suggesting?" Tom pulled up a global map on the main screen. "We can't stop the storm, but we might be able to redirect enough of it to protect your station. If we combine your station's shields with Earth's natural magnetic field, and then add our ground-based electromagnetic pulse network." Vale stared at the rough diagram Tom was sketching. It was primitive, almost childishly simple compared to Federation technology. Yet something about the basic principles nagged at his centuries of experience. "It's impossible," he stated, but with less certainty than before. The coordination required a lone wolf. "Actually," Dr. Reed interrupted, her eyes bright as she ran the calculations, "the basic physics is sound. Unorthodox, but potentially viable." The clock was ticking. Vale looked at the confident faces of the humans around him, then at his own crew's worried expressions. For the first time in his long career, he faced a choice: stick to proven Federation protocols and likely fail, or trust in what seemed like a primitive solution from a supposedly primitive species. Time was running out, and he had to decide now. Tom rushed to explain his plan, his hands moving quickly over the facility's main display screen. The room fell silent as both humans and aliens gathered around to listen. "Look here," he said, pointing to a map of Earth's magnetic field. "Your station's shields are failing because they're trying to block the radiation head-on. But we learned years ago that deflection works better than direct resistance." Vale watched with growing interest as Tom pulled up more diagrams. The human's explanation was simple, yet it showed a deep understanding of fundamental principles that the Admiral had forgotten in his reliance on advanced technology. "We have a network of ground-based stations originally built to protect our power grids," Tom continued. "They're not as advanced as your shields, but they can create a series of electromagnetic pulses that could help guide the solar radiation around your station, using Earth's magnetic field as a natural shield." Dr. Reed's eyes widened as she understood. "Like a river flowing around a rock," she said, her scaled fingers already running calculations on her pad. "Instead of trying to stop the radiation, we guide it along a safer path." "Exactly." Tom smiled. "But we'll need to link your station's shields with our ground network. Can your technology interface with ours?" Vale frowned. "Our systems are centuries ahead of yours. The compatibility issues alone." "Then we adapt," Tom interrupted, already typing commands into his computer. We don't need perfect integration. We just need enough communication to synchronize the timing. He looked up at Vale. Admiral, this will work, but we need your help. The Admiral studied the human's face, searching for any sign of doubt. He found none. Instead, he saw something he had missed before, a quiet confidence born not of arrogance, but of tested experience. You have 1 hour, Vale decided. Show me what humans can do. What followed was unlike anything Vale had seen in his centuries of space travel. Tom quickly organized the humans into teams, each with a specific task. They didn't waste time with formal protocols or chain of command. They simply found who was best suited for each job and got to work. One team began reprogramming Earth's ground stations, while another worked with Dr. Reed to calculate the precise timing needed. A third group modified their communication systems to talk with the station's computers. Admiral, Tom called out, we need your shield specifications. The more detailed, the better. Vale hesitated only briefly before sending over the classified Federation data. He watched in amazement as the humans quickly grasped concepts that had taken other species years to understand. Look at this, Dr. Reed whispered to him, pointing at a group of humans. They're not just following instructions. They're improving the plan as they work. Each team is adding their own innovations. She was right. The humans weren't simply executing Tom's plan. They were evolving it. When they hit obstacles, they found workarounds. When something didn't work, they tried new approaches. Their progress wasn't neat or elegant by Federation standards, but it was remarkably effective. 30 minutes until impact, the station's computer announced. Tom looked up from his work, his face showing tired satisfaction. We're ready for the first test, he said. Admiral, we need you to authorize the shield modifications. Vale looked at the jury-rigged system the humans had built. By Federation standards, it was primitive, a patchwork of old and new technology, held together by improvised connections and creative programming. Everything he knew said it shouldn't work. But as he looked at the confident faces around him, Vale realized he was seeing something he had never truly understood before. The real power of humanity wasn't in their physical strength or their technology. It was time to trust in something he couldn't measure with his advanced sensors. All stations, report status. Tom's voice carried across the now crowded control room. Dozens of screens showed different parts of their makeshift system, each monitored by focused teams of humans and aliens working side by side. Ground Station 1, ready. Ground Station 2, ready. Ground Station 3, standing by. The calls came in from around the globe. In just under an hour, humans had converted their planet's electromagnetic defense network into something entirely new. Vale watched in silent amazement as these supposedly primitive beings coordinated a planet-wide response without any central governing eye. 15 minutes until solar storm impact, the station's computer announced calmly. Dr. Reed stood beside Vale, her scaled fingers dancing across multiple screens. Admiral, the humans have successfully linked their ground stations to our shield network. It's not elegant, but... She paused, double-checking her readings. It's working better than our simulations predicted. Vale stepped closer to the main display, where Tom was making final adjustments. The screen showed Earth's magnetic field, their orbital station, and the approaching wall of solar radiation. The humans' plan was about to be tested, and hundreds of lives hung in the balance. 10 minutes to impact. The computer updated. This is your last chance to evacuate essential personnel, Tom said to Vale, his eyes never leaving the screens. If this doesn't work. But Vale shook his head. No, we stay. He straightened his uniform, a gesture that showed both his authority and his commitment. Show me what Earth can do. The next few minutes were filled with rapid-fire adjustments and coordinations. Humans around the world reported local weather conditions that might affect their ground stations. Others monitored power levels, making constant tiny adjustments to maintain the delicate balance between Earth's systems and the Federation's technology. 5 minutes to impact. All stations, begin power-up sequence. Tom commanded. Around the globe, human engineers activated their modified electromagnetic pulse generators. The room's lights dimmed slightly as massive amounts of power were diverted to the defense network. 3 minutes to impact. Dr. Reed's eyes widened as she watched her instruments. "Admiral, look at this," she whispered. "The human's electromagnetic field is perfectly synchronizing with our shield harmonics. It's like they're dancing together." 1 minute to impact. The room fell silent. On the main screen, they could see the massive solar storm approaching. It was beautiful and terrifying. A wall of deadly radiation that could fry every electronic system in orbit and potentially reach Earth's surface. 30 seconds. Tom's voice remained steady. "All stations, prepare for deflection sequence. Remember, we're not fighting the storm, we're guiding it. Like water around a rock." 10 seconds. Vale held his breath. Everything he knew about physics and technology told him this shouldn't work. Yet here he stood, putting his faith in a species he had dismissed as primitive just hours ago. Impact in 3, 2, 1. The storm hit. On the main screen, they watched as the massive surge of radiation approached their combined defense system. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, slowly but surely, they saw it. The radiation was beginning to flow around their defenses, just as Tom had predicted. Ground Station 1, holding steady. Ground Station 2, field stable. Ground Station 3, deflection pattern nominal. The reports continued to come in as the humans adjusted their equipment in real time, compensating for fluctuations and maintaining the delicate balance between Earth's magnetic field and the station's shields. Vale watched in awe as the deadly radiation was channeled safely around both Earth and the orbital station, guided by nothing more sophisticated than basic physics and human determination. Dr. Reed's instruments confirmed what their eyes could see. It was working. The humans' primitive solution was accomplishing what billions of credits worth of Federation technology couldn't do alone. The control room erupted in cheers as the last of the solar storm passed safely around Earth and the station. Humans hugged each other, and even some of the alien crew members joined in the celebration. But Admiral Vale stood quietly, his silver eyes fixed on the main screen as he processed what he had just witnessed. Dr. Reed approached him, her datapad displaying the final readings. "Admiral, you need to see these numbers," she said, her voice filled with excitement. The humans didn't just survive the storm. They managed to protect both their planet and our station with technology that's centuries behind ours. Vale nodded slowly, his centuries of experience forcing him to face an uncomfortable truth. "But it wasn't just their technology, was it, Doctor?" he said quietly. "We've been measuring the wrong things all along." Tom walked over, wiping sweat from his forehead. He looked tired but satisfied. "Admiral, we're getting reports from all ground stations. No damage anywhere. Your station's shields held perfectly once we synchronized them with our electromagnetic field." "Tell me, Tom," Vale said, turning to face the human engineer. "How did you know this would work? Your species hasn't even left your solar system yet. You've never dealt with technology like ours before." Tom smiled. "We didn't know for sure," he admitted. "But humans have always been good at working with what we have. We can't lift as much as your species, so we invented levers. We can't run as fast, so we built vehicles. We can't fly, so we created planes." Dr. Reed's eyes lit up with understanding. "It's not about raw capability," she said, checking her notes from the earlier evaluation tests. "It's about adaptation and innovation." Vale walked around the room, looking at the various teams still monitoring their systems. He saw humans from different countries working together, speaking different languages, but understanding each other perfectly when it came to solving problems. He saw how they had taken their primitive technology and found ways to make it work alongside advanced Federation systems. "In all my years of evaluating species," Vale said, more to himself than to others, "I've been looking for strength in all the wrong places." He turned to face the room. Your bodies might be weaker than many species we've encountered. Your technology might be centuries behind ours. But your minds? We make do with what we have, Tom said simply. And we're pretty good at finding new ways to use old tools. Vale picked up one of the human's tablets, so basic compared to his own devices, yet they had used it to help save hundreds of lives. You don't try to overpower problems, he realized. You find ways around them. When you can't go through an obstacle, we go over it, or under it, or we change the rules entirely, Tom finished with a grin. That's kind of our specialty. Dr. Reed was already updating her evaluation reports. Admiral, look at these patterns. While other species focus on developing new technologies to solve problems, humans excel at finding new ways to use existing resources. They don't just adapt to their environment. They adapt their environment to their needs. Vale watched as the human teams began the process of returning their global network to its normal operations. They worked with an efficiency that didn't come from advanced AI or superior technology, but from something much more valuable: creativity, adaptability, and an unwavering determination to overcome challenges. Doctor, Vale said, his voice carrying a new respect, I believe we need to completely revise our evaluation criteria. He looked at the humans with new eyes, finally seeing what he had missed before. Physical strength and technological advancement are easy to measure, but they're not always the best indicators of a species' true capabilities. In the corner of the room, a small group of humans was already discussing how to improve their makeshift system for future emergencies. Vale listened to their excited conversation, realizing that what he had initially seen as primitive simplicity was actually elegant efficiency. 1 week after the solar storm, Admiral Vale stood before the Federation Council's holographic projection in the same testing facility where his journey of discovery had begun. The room was packed with both humans and Federation observers, all waiting to hear his evaluation of Earth. Honorable Council, Vale began, his voice firm and confident. I come before you to present my findings about Earth and its dominant species, humans. He paused, looking around the room at the faces that had proven him so wrong about their capabilities. When I first arrived on this planet, I saw what our instruments told me to see: a physically weak species with primitive technology. My initial reports reflected this. He gestured to Dr. Reed, who displayed the early test results. By our traditional metrics, humans failed almost every standard evaluation. Murmurs spread through the council members' holograms. Vale held up his hand for silence. However, he continued, I stand before you today to admit that our metrics are flawed. We have been measuring strength by the wrong standards. He nodded to Tom, who stepped forward with the data from the solar storm incident. 1 week ago, Earth faced a crisis that even our advanced Federation technology couldn't handle alone. Our orbital station, with all its sophisticated shields, was about to be destroyed by a massive solar storm. The humans saved not only their own planet, but also our station and crew. The main screen displayed recordings of how the humans had worked together during the crisis. Vale walked through the room as he spoke, his voice growing more passionate. But it's not just what they did, it's how they did it. While we focus on creating new technology for each problem, humans excel at finding innovative ways to use what they already have. Where we seek to overpower obstacles, they find clever ways to work around them. Dr. Reed displayed more data, showing the unique patterns of human problem-solving. Their true strength, Vale explained, lies not in their muscles or their machines, but in their minds and their methods. He turned to face the council directly. In my centuries of evaluating species, I have never seen one that adapts so quickly, thinks so creatively, or works together so effectively. They turn their very weaknesses into strengths. Their limited physical capabilities have driven them to develop incredible problem-solving skills. Their technological limitations have forced them to be more innovative. Tom stepped forward with a small, simple lever, the same type of tool the humans had used in their first strength test. Vale picked it up, showing it to the council. This primitive tool represents everything I've learned about humans. They don't try to match our strength. They find ways to multiply their own. They don't wait for perfect solutions. They work with what they have. And most importantly, they share their knowledge freely, building on each other's ideas to create something greater than any individual could achieve alone. Vale placed the lever carefully on the table before him. Distinguished council members, I recommend Earth for immediate membership in the Federation. Not because they match our traditional criteria, but because they will make us better. They will show us new ways to solve old problems. They will teach us that true strength comes in many forms. He looked around the room one final time, meeting the eyes of the humans who had changed his view of the universe. Earth is not a weak planet waiting to be uplifted by the Federation. They are a strong civilization that will help us all grow stronger, not through superior force or advanced technology, but through creativity, adaptability, and cooperation. The council chambers fell silent as the members considered Vale's words. In that moment, looking at the proud faces of the humans around him, Vale knew that his report would change not only Earth's future, but the Federation's understanding of what made a civilization truly advanced. The Admiral smiled, something he rarely did. He had come to Earth expecting to find weakness. Instead, he had discovered a new kind of strength, one that couldn't be measured by any traditional test, but could be seen in every human solution to every challenge they faced.